Welcome to Class 5. Before I start with Class 5, I'd like to get back to you on Class 4, where we had some issues with the fire rating filter. Now, after a class recording, I looked up what the problem was, and in this case, there are two fire rating parameters, one from the old shared parameter file and one from a newer shared parameter file. And because of the filter was already existing, it was actually looking for one of the fire rating parameters, but since there were two, there was this problem that Revit couldn't really find, didn't know what to do. And this is something that you will encounter probably more than once. So what I did was get the fire rating, and what you'll see now that it works, because everything that was 60 minutes is turned off. Wait to check. So let's set the background color to green for fire rating equals 60, and it works. So what I actually did was edit this filter, and first did it with another parameter, and I tested it, and then I went back to fire rating and said equals 60. So that is how I fixed it. And unfortunately, problems like that will occur every now and then, and you will find one out in Class 5 as well. So, Class 5. Today we're going to talk about windows. So first, placing windows separate and within a host. Then we're going to create a new window type and add it to the Kozijnhost. And after that, we will rename the windows and Kozijnhost with Dynamo graph. And for a good IFC export, we'll assemble the decomposed windows. So here I have a part of a facade. I didn't do it for the whole building because otherwise the graphs will take too long. And you'll see here that this is a window that is called, the family is called 31 WIWB Kozijnhost. So window for the category 31 because it's the NLSB code for window frames, windows in the outer facade, and WB means wall-based. And I've created this family specifically to add windows to cut through walls in the facade. And if I would edit this type, I would see that there is a Windows parameter, which is a family parameter where we can choose a family, and there are some dimensions to set the cuts in the wall. And that's it. So if I would go to plan view, you'll see that I can, with CS, create similar, create this window in this facade. And it has to be placed within a wall, because that's the host. And you can see that now the window is flipping. That depends on how I approach the wall. And there's also a choice to be made which wall you use as a host, and it should be according to the detail, because and that's usually the insulation or the HSB wall. I will see that it will be placed, and it cuts through the wall, but not entirely. Oh, yes, it does, I think. Just hide elements, this one. So now it cuts, and I just place it somewhere, and this is probably the default sill height, which is the height from the level to the bottom of the window. So I still have to edit this one, something that I like, and of course I can copy it. And if I say create host, then I put it here, it will probably be placed in the wrong host. Now what's also possible, and that's why I've created this host, is if I top into the host, I'll get the window itself, 31 window A17, with a lot of text behind it saying it's a aluminum window frame with fixed glazing, dry-keep glazing to the left and another dry-keep to the left, and there is a dimension. So if I now say create similar, I can place this window anywhere I like, and that's really what I want. I want to be able to use this window frame separately and within a host. And if I would create a new window from the family template Windows, you'll see that I always start with a wall and a cut in the wall. And there is this flip marker. Of course, need to get rid of that immediately. So if I now use this one to create a window, then this window can only be used inside the walls. And of course, 95% of the time you need it. But on the other hand, for example, Krykius is built up of only windows that are not cutting through walls, because the windows are that high from floor to floor, with some extra ventilation stuff on top of the window frame that is still attached to it. And next to it there is ASB, wood timber, but that's just like very small. So basically we have that, we did it separately. So you need to be able to use the windows in both ways. So of course you're a lot more flexible with this one, but still you need to cut holes if you put it into the walls. That's why we have this Kozijnhost. Yeah, so how is this Kozijnhost built up? It is a window that has only two wall cuts in it and the window frame itself. So it's a bit hard to see, but you see here that number one is a box that is outside of this wall, because this is the host and this is the rest of the wall to the outside, and we call it sparing buiten. And number two is another box, that's the sparing host. So you have two boxes that cut through walls, and you can set them separately. So the sparing host cuts the wall where you insert it, and buiten cuts the exterior walls. And here you can find some more explanation. It's in Dutch, and it's a bit more elaborate, but basically this is what it says. So if you look in the front, you'll see that there are some things that you need to do. For example, the sill height. Like I said, there is a default sill height if you place it. So the bottom of the window is exactly the bottom of the window until the reference level. Then we have stelruimte onder, which is basically the dimension from the bottom, also from the side and the top of the window to the opening. And here is sparing buiten onder, and that's where the void in the outer walls start. So if you have like brickwork that will end at a certain dimension, and the window frame will start like 50 or 60 millimeters higher. This is the way to do it. And then from that level, reference level on, you can set the sparing height for the outside. And sparing buitenhoogte starts where the stelruimte starts. So the timber stelkozijn around it will be fixed into the wall. Now there are, of course, there is an order in how to do it, and still you will get you will encounter some problems, or well, some Revit stuff. So let's place a window here, and I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to use just a simple one, AO1, which is also just fixed glazing. And I know that this is a dimension of like 1316, and if I look here, you see that there is this 50 millimeters. That is the distance from the window. So basically, what I need is a window that is 1330 millimeters wide. Now I don't have it yet, so I just need to create one. So I duplicate an existing one, and I'm not going too concerned about the name, because we'll rename it later. So the width is 1630. Now it was 1330, and I just want to leave the height as it is. And now I can place it, and I see that this is the correct dimension. So now I need to add it to the Kozijnhost. So you can, if you need to do a new Kozijn window frame that's the same dimension as the existing one. For example, these AO1s we use in the beginning when you don't know what exactly the appearance is of the window, or maybe the new windows are not made yet. So these are also used as a placeholder. So then you could easily change this one, or you just say create a new type, and in this new type double click, of course, or yeah, you have to double click it because it's not in the model yet. We'll see here that this is just, I think, the last window that's in the list. So here we're going to browse to the correct window. So I made this one just now, and I'm going to do nothing, just have it here. And now we'll see if I drag it, I put it in this wall. And this is what we get. We get the window, and you'll see, if you've already done some workshops, that the openings are not associated with the width and height of the window frame. And I did this on purpose, because families with this family list, this parameter that you can choose families, can sometimes be a bit unstable. So I don't want to associate too much. I also want to be able to change it the way you want, because maybe you want something on the side, an extra opening, so you have a bit more freedom, but still you need to set a bit more. Now you see that, let's go to this one, says 15, and I'll leave it like that, it's better for this example. So you'll see this is of course illegal because it now is too high, but still you see that this is the opening. So now we're going to need to set the sparing. So for now I will align this one. Now you know that align is a shortcut with only one letter. So after that after letter A we will just press space. And I'm going to move this 15. So now it's in the right place. And unfortunately, for this example, dimensions are already set correctly. So what I'm going to do here is just very quickly see what happens. Now it's a bit strange. This is what I like to show you. You see that this is the host, and the thickness of the host is not set correctly. Also, the thickness of the outside walls are not set correctly. So in order to place this wall, this window in the correct position, the first thing we need to do is set the thickness of this of the facade. Now the host is this wall, and it has a thickness of 260. So that's this one here, 260. And from here to the outside it's 140. So I double click here and I say so Kozijnhost diepte, so the depth thickness of the host is 260 and the depth thickness of the outside wall is 140. So now you will also see that this rectangle here shows the opening in the host. You see that the opening in the outer walls are a bit wider. So if we look at this, we see that sparing buitenbreedte is 1860 and sparing hoostbreedte is 1850. So if this is 1330, which of course is not enough, because we still need to add the stelruimte, which is 10. So we need to add 20. So 1330, 1350. So now it's cut correctly in the host, but the outside wall is still too big. So you see that that's why it's important to first set the thicknesses, so you can actually measure and set the dimensions correctly. So the opening in the outside walls should be 1360. So that's that. And now you can see that the negge, the distance from the outside to the front of the window frame, is 200. So the negge that you are setting here is only the correct dimension if you did everything else correctly. And the nice thing about it is that it can be a negative negge. So -50, it can be 0. But we want to have it in 90 in this case. So of course we can do the same with the height. If I do a section box around this, let's create this one, that's even nicer. So sometimes you don't want to find out, so you could also just measure this dimension and then subtract it from the dimension of the height. But still now, if you just stop into the window frame, you'll see that the height is 2505 and the stelruimte here is 10 and above it's also 10. So the sparing hoogte should be is 2505 plus 10 plus 10. Of course I can do that by hand, and now we still see that the outside is also, where is the top of that? Of course we don't have the wall there. So let's maybe just create this a bit lower for this example. Yeah, so this wall is now still cutting here. So we also need to set the sparing buiten hoogte, which is set the same. Might be. So now you see that the two openings are aligned. But if we would have a waterslag, or whatever it's called in English, I don't know, then we would want to start this sparing buiten, we want it to start lower. So again, let's say sparing buiten onderkant ten opzichte van Kozijnhost is, this is always a positive value, and it only measures down. So if you would say 100, it always measures 100 down. So you can do that, and of course the height starts here. So we need to set the sparing buiten hoogte as 1625. And now we have set that correct. So that's how you can create new window frames, new types of existing families, and put them in Kozijnhost. And sometimes it will happen that if you place a new one, that the dimensions are all wrong, maybe some strange width, maybe sometimes the stelkozijn are strange, then you just need to set some dimensions again, but you will find out if that happens. And of course what we also didn't have to do now was set the stelkozijn diepte in this window, which is not here, but for the completeness, let's say stelkozijn diepte, if this one would be 500, so that's another important dimension. So that's it for the Kozijnhost. Now let's see how we can rename the windows and the window Kozijnhost. Because you just duplicated it, and now you see that there is for window A01, we have A01.1, 2, 2, 2, 3. And for this one, if I double click, you'll see that the name is A01.1, and it has a dimension of 1670 by 2505, which is the height and width. And merk, which is the unique number of this window frame, is A01.1. And for 2 is the same, but for this one, we'll see that this is still the name, but the dimensions are different, and it's still called A01.1. While we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 windows. So basically, we would say that this should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for that, I've created a graph because I don't want to bother you with renaming all these windows. If you create a new one, you would first have to duplicate it like I did, and then of course set the dimensions, set the correct brand, merk, and then also rename the family correctly. So what happens if you do that, and then maybe the next day you've changed the type of brick, and you need to widen all the window frames by 10 millimeters or whatever, then you have to rename everything again. So let's see how we can fix that. So we have a rename. You see you have it for doors and windows as well, but I think that doors will be a separate class because it's somehow a bit different. Now, rename windows, I can choose which one I need. So basically I want to have all of them that start with 31WIA, and it's important to do that because then it will rename these and not the parts of the door, and also not Kozijnhost, because if I just did everything, then okay, everything will happen. And this is that it starts with A for aluminum. I could also just do A01. Maybe if I have a big project with a lot of windows, this could be better. But for this case, it doesn't really matter because it's quite small. see. Just open that and just rename this for fun. Let's see what happens. And run the graph. And what you should actually also do is first purge out all the family types that are not there. Because maybe the AO1s, if I just say check none, family, you see that there are, so AO1.4 is not in the project. So let's get rid of that one. And now you have 1, 2, 3, 5. So let's do it again, and maybe just do it for this one. So you see that the name and the merk are renamed. So basically you can only do this up until the TO, so the technical design phase, because then contractors are using all these family types for their calculations, and then it's not possible anymore to change the names. So be aware of that. And what we have in the Kozijnhost, it's the same. It's a bit more simple. It just reads what family is in there and renames it to that. So next up is exporting, because of course IFC is very important. So if I have windows, you might have seen that the windows are built up of more than one families. So what you see here is we have the frame itself, which is in the window. Then we have two types of raam, like a really window, so a window frame, a window. Inside the window there's a glass panel. There is even a symbol and another symbol to show the operation. There is the style cosine. So this is what we call a decomposed window. And if you would export this decomposed window to IFC, this is what you get. The family, as we know it in Revit, does not export, because all the separate parts are exported separately. And that's very nice for calculations and for finding out how many glass is in the model. But we cannot combine the window frames into one brand. And that's what we want. What we want is this. We want to be able to click on a window just the same as we click on a window in Revit. So the family is basically a collection of elements. So that's why we are creating assemblies to export that to an IFC element assembly. So an ensemble assembly of elements. And what you then see in, for example, Solibri, is that if you click on a window, you will get this specific window. You actually can see how many of the windows we have, and you see how it decomposes. It decomposes into the window frame, into the window, into glass, into three glass panels, window, style cosine. So this is how these are decomposing. Now to do that, we are going to create assemblies, and here is the explanation of how to do it. Of course, I will show you in a minute. So you can read this document on how to do that. But assemblies are really hard to work with. So we only assemble the windows before we start exporting to IFC. And if you start working on the model again, and you need to do edit or add windows, you just explode, disassemble all the assemblies. let's go back to Dynamo, where we have assemblies create, disassemble, IFC name, and we don't really need that one. This is so assemblies create. I have found out that there might be a bit of a glitch. So and also this graph will take some time. So what you should do is create assemblies one family at a time. So because this one is for doors and windows as well, I have a toggle, a button that says let's get windows, and let's say this is not good because I need to do AO1 because this is filtering the types, and not these types, but the types that are in the project. So AO1, and what you will see, if I click, that it now has created an assembly. Let's see where it is. It's here. So AO1. You see that I still have 4 types, but there's only one AO1 in the project. So let's do another one. This is A17. And we have more of them. And what you will see now is that we have A17-1 and another one. That's why I added a suffix to it, because that's the thing. It looks for the window, and so 17.1 is 3 times in the project, but I know this one as well, and that one is not inside a host, so that's why it's different. And that's not really a problem, because we're going to rename it. We first check if the IFC name is of course already in, and we have to have the IFC spatial container. And is it there? No. Of course this parameter should be in the project, but this is probably an older template. I'm sorry about that. So we need to find it. Here, IFC. IFC space, come on. IFC spatial container. Why is it not here? Oh, I did select the wrong file. You see, it's the file with type. And I thought, oh, yeah. I got the wrong file. And that's why there is a difference. Because IFC spatial container can only be set for instances value by group instance. And what this one does, and I'll only add it to the assemblies. What this does is it says to the assembly. You see that now it's created an assembly, and in the assembly there is the Kozijnhost and in the Kozijnhost. So that's why there are different assemblies, because in this assembly there is the window itself. So if I would export this one to IFC, they would all end up at the lowest level, because an assembly is not connected to a level. That's why we need to set it. We need to set the IFC spatial container, which is the container, because a level building story is basically also some sort of container where you can put stuff in. So we can just say add this assembly to the spatial container that has the same name as the level. So if I would look at this, I want to filter the assemblies on A. Still did something. A1. Yeah. A17. So now you see that this assembly used to be a strange name, or didn't have. It has this name, but now I added IFC name, and it's on the first floor. So now we can find the window frame. So these assemblies are different. You see there are multiple types, but still they have the same name. So they will be sorted if you look for A17.1. In this case, they're all on the first floor, but then you could also sort them on the different floors. Now, of course, if you want to change this window, you will get some, let's see what happens. Do we get a warning of some sorts? It will take some time. Why? No. Well, it did work, but sometimes you will get a warning saying it doesn't compute with the assembly. So basically, if you start working on the model again, just disassemble everything, or just the ones that you need. So disassemble what? Just type in part of the name, and they're calling. Because they're not for working, they're just for assembling elements for IFC export. So that was class 5.